Yo, what's poppin', Logang? Today we're going to be doing another rant. This one comes from Ultra Seraph, who says, actually, I need to scroll to find this rant. Hold on. Uh, Alrighty. For the next album, I want you to listen to The Downward Spiral by Nine Inch Nails. No particular order this time, just listen to it in normal order. Now, first of all, he DM'd it to me on Discord, and so that's why I had to scroll through our DMs for a second. I'm also in my garage and eating granola bars because I'm hungry, and so you're just gonna have to deal with that. But Ultra Seraph has given me two rants in the past, and they were both for different albums. So the first was him trying to country pill me on country music with two country albums by Johnny Cash and John Prine. And the second one, this is going to get really annoying real quick. I hope you know that, and I don't feel bad for it. But the second one was The Black Parade by My Chemical Romance. And the country albums, one of them was okay, one of them was bad. And then I liked The Black Parade, but this time we're looking at The Downward Spiral by Nin. He's trying to NINpill me. Holy shit, this album is so good. you guys, this album. Now, granted, I'm not saying anything particularly revolutionary. It's apparently a really well-regarded album from the 90s. But the thing is, I'm a Zoomer, so I wasn't around when this... I was, like, years away from conception when this album came out. So to me, this is something that I've never heard of, and that I listened to today, and so I can get blown away by it, in the modern era. As well, I'm also not even that into music. Like, I don't listen to that many albums. The only reason I've been listening to a fair bit of albums recently is because of Ultra Seraph, because he wants to red pill me on all his music tastes. And you know what? You got me on this one. This is a goodie. So, the idea behind the Downward Spiral is basically depicting a dude who is having an increasingly elaborate mental downward spiral. And the way it's depicted is obviously, through a lot of very, very fun lyrics, a lot of very, very, very happy-go-lucky lyrics. I have a few quoted. So, like, In the song I Do Not Want This, I stay inside my bed. I have lived so many lives inside my head. Disregarding the stutters, it's lines like that. I want to know everything. I want to be everywhere. I want to fuck everyone in the world. I want to do something that matters. And there's a lot of repeated lyrics over and over again. That right there, that's the outro of the song, and it gets repeated like at least 5 times or something like that. I don't actually have all the lyrics on standby, just some screenshots of the Genius page, because I was looking at the lyrics on Genius as well as reading some interpretations while listening to the album, while also taking notes on everything, because I have a bad memory. This is not a song that you listen to recreationally, I guess. I mean, maybe you're built different and you can just throw this on in the background while chilling out. I couldn't. You'd be a much stronger man than I. The entire point of the album is that it's supposed to be this emotionally charged, super bitter, super depressing downward spiral. And the album is really intent on making sure that you feel as much dread as the protagonist of the song. There are some moments of respite, most notably A Warm Place, which is an instrumental song of all things that is really pleasant sounding until the very end. We'll probably get to that. But most of the time, it's very, very harsh, lots of distortion, and it's very unique sounding. At least I haven't heard anything quite like it. The songs aren't really catchy in the traditional sense. It's not something that you're like, oh, I want to sing. I want to sing along to this. I just need to start dancing on the spot. No, you aren't gonna dance to this because you'll be too miserable to dance. It's more so an emotional experience of delving into the story and just sitting there with the ideas being bounced around in the sheer depression and angst of the lyrics. Listen, I'm hungry, okay? There's themes of like religion and being like, oh, what the fuck, religion bad, God bad. So the big old religion song is Heresy at the beginning, and it's expressing anger about religion, and how the world is filled with suffering, and hey, that's God's world. He just stands by and does nothing, you know, and people commit atrocities in God's name. That one kind of reminded me of when I was an edgy atheist, but it also completely makes sense with the themes of the album, because and this is how I connected with this song, where it's like, becoming an atheist won't make you any happier, at least in my experience. I'm an atheist. I don't believe in God. I just can't get myself to believe in that dude. But it didn't make me happier to be that way. I believe in it because I think it's right. I think it's the truth, but it's not a happy truth. It's not fun to know that there's no one there looking after you and that there is no point to life. Which, this is also a very nihilistic album, as you could probably imagine. And so to me, the idea of becoming an atheist in like media, songs, stories, the way I've always wanted it to be expressed is like, do you want truth or comfort, essentially? And this is the most disconcerting and uncomfortable album possible. Like, yeah, no shit he's an atheist. No shit he thinks life has no meaning. No shit that made him miserable. It isn't the only thing making him miserable, but it's one of them. Another aspect of the album, oft remarked on partially because of its controversy, is its high amount of sexually charged content. And this was another very interesting thing to think about. Because basically the protagonist of the song has a sort of addiction to sex and this very self-loathing mindset in regards to it, where he's like, oh, I'm just some animal. I'm like sullying this person. I'm a slave to my desires. Those sorts of ideas are being bounced around in songs like Reptile and Big Man with a Gun. That is one hell of a title. And speaking of Big Man with a Gun, that's essentially the moment where he goes completely insane. So the idea behind the album is, you're depressed and you hate yourself and there's so many things and you feel like you're no longer human. And then there's the end of I Do Not Want This, where I quoted the lyrics before. I want to know everything. I want to be everywhere. And, just repeating that over and over again. And that leads directly into a mental breakdown. I am very sad that I didn't actually quote any lyrics of it in my notes. At that point, I was engrossed enough in the album that I was like, I don't want to stop listening to it. I just want to keep on writing things, or not keep on writing things. I just want to keep on listening. But it's essentially, it's not too complicated lyrically. It's It's just, I want to fuck women and I want to shoot people. It's like the two most base sociopathic desires imaginable. And that's the point of the song. It's unhinged. And, it's the protagonist of the song, of the album, reaching his absolute breaking point to the point where it's just mania from here on out. Well, not just mania, because, as I mentioned before, there's A Warm Place, which is an instrumental song. Now, one thing that I think this album does better than anything else is instilling a sense of horror and dread in you. Like, it's a horror album. Maybe not literally one, but the ideas it expresses and the way it expresses them sort of play out like one, where you're stuck in the mind of someone who is quickly losing his mind, who, like, there's not a happy thought in this album except for A Warm Place, which is a brief moment of respite after losing your mind. And so, like, the instrumentation is almost always harsh and dissonant and almost unpleasant to listen to at times, but in the best way possible. Like, the album is difficult to sit through at times, but in a really good way, where it's like, I don't want to listen to the next song because I know he's just gonna be even more depressed than the last song. But at the same time, I also totally want to listen to the next song because they're all really good. And A Warm Place, I think, is one of the best examples of that, where it's like, it's such a chilled out song in many regards. It's the most calm the instrumental is. But this entire time you're listening to what is essentially just like a kind of cool, like instrumental song. It's like, I know what it's meant to represent, and I know it ain't gonna last. I know at any moment it's going to be interrupted by more mania and more misery. And sure enough, it does. And the most dread I felt, perhaps, in the entire album is when the melody is going on and then there's like these sort of electronic-ish distorted noises in the background, and it leads directly into Eraser. And Eraser is also a lot of instrumental stuff. And just with instruments, it makes you go like, oh no, it's gonna get worse, isn't it? And then, I have some more lyrics screenshotted from Eraser. Need you, dream you, find you, taste you, fuck you, use you, scar you, break you, lose me, hate me, smash me, erase me, kill me, kill me, kill me, and it keeps on going with the kill me's for quite some time. As you can tell, the lyrics in this song are very, very happy, very joyful. They make you love life. My Little Pony ain't got no happiness on this. Going back to the theme of like him feeling like a monster for, being addicted to sex and a slave to his desires, like angels bleed from the tainted touch of my caress. And a reptile in and of itself describes a relationship with someone who he describes as a beautiful liar and a precious whore. So, some interesting moments that I noted. So the Ruiner's chorus has this like very powerful sounding, brass-ish sounding instrument. I can't actually pinpoint by sound what it is, especially because everything in this album is very distorted sounding, but it had a lot of power to it. I liked it. And then The Becoming. This song as a whole is about apathy, which is a subject that I'm very interested in. And that, I care a lot about, because I've had streaks of that in my life. And so it was a song that I could relate to in a lot of ways, although the constant screaming of crowds in the background for the first 2 minutes of the song, that got a little old, a little very quickly, but it's okay. It goes away after long enough, and it's made up for by these guitar segments with a lot of distortion underneath. And the idea behind it is that There's a lot of peace in not being able to feel anything at all, at least the way that I read it. But in the background, the distortion, you can tell that something's up, that, maybe this isn't the best way to, get over your horrible self-loathing and misery. Like, maybe feeling nothing at all isn't the right solution, and you're gonna go back to misery at any moment. Yeah, this is definitely an album that sort of sucks you in like a downward spiral, and the more you listen to it, the more you just get enraptured in the ideas it's spinning out. So, I'd say the most horrifying song of the album is The Downward Spiral. And what I have in my notes is it sounds like an almost peaceful song, but there's so much distortion and discordance in very subtle ways. Jesus Christ. As you can tell by that point, I was split between wanting to cry and wanting to throw up, because, like I said, it's a very emotional album if you're looking at the lyrics and listening to the instrumentation. And, like, the lyrics of this song are basically the point where he offs himself, where he's like, you know what, I ain't taking this no more. Like, hey, you can fix mistakes after all, with a gun pointed at your head. And the way he sings it is very, very good. Gets the point across in a spine-chilling way. He sounds really, really delighted and almost manic when he says it, like, so much blood from such a tiny hole. It's great. I love it. I also hated listening to it. I loved listening to it, though. I hate it in the best way. And then we have Hurt, which is the final song of the album. Which, the reason why I'm bringing this up is because I heard a cover of this, actually, in the first rant that Ultra Seraph had me do. Which, from Johnny Cash. And although that was actually one of my favorite songs on Johnny Cash's album, it hits a lot harder when it's within the context of the album as a whole. Like, leaving behind, like, you could have it all, my empire of dirt. Like, that just hits a lot harder when you're, listening to it in the context of everything else. Now, a lot of this album is very up for interpretation, and people do have many interpretations of it. I don't think it's really my place to speak much there, because I listened through it once. I probably will again in due time, but it's definitely something you need to be in the mood for. It's not something you can just throw on. You need to be suicidally depressed yourself to listen to it. That's the mood you get in. And then you start listening to it to cope, because someone else is there, feeling the same things you do. So when you see on my media list, re-listened to The Downward Spiral, start DMing me and saying if I need help. I can see why people really gravitate towards this album and why it's considered revolutionary and like one of the greats from the 90s. And then one last bit of the lyrics from Hurt that I had written down, or screenshotted rather. If I could start again, a million miles away, I would keep myself, I would find a way. And it's basically saying, I would keep myself, that self that I hate so much, but maybe, I'd be able to find a way to make myself be able to live, is how I read the I would find a way line. Although maybe it's I would find a way to keep myself exactly as awful as I was before, no matter what, and then I'd off myself again. I've heard much interpretation of just that outro. In Genius. I don't trust Genius annotations automatically, but, they're sometimes helpful. And that's about it. Obviously, I have notes on every single song, but like I said, I'm not gonna go too far into, interpreting everything, because it'd be relatively uninformed. And with that, see ya. Oh yeah, I forgot to give it a score. Uh, Probably like a 9 out of 10. Yeah, that seems about right. The only reason it's not a 10 is because Willwood and Lemon Demon are a 10. Those are completely tonally distinct from this album. They're literally incomparable, but they're the type of music that I have found myself gravitating towards. So that's why it's not a 10. Otherwise, it's chef's kiss. Yeah, this time actually see ya.